If you don't know me, my name's Melanie Philmeyer. I'm the District Supervisor of Guidance. I'm very, very lucky because I have worked with so many families. Don't get me wrong, it's not easy all the time in the beginning, but we get there and we've been able to do really amazing things. And you know, one of the things that I was thinking about for this presentation tonight, last night I'm laying with my newborn. And it's interesting because I'm holding him and I'm like, please, dear God, go to sleep, right? Like, please go to sleep. And then I think about all the families and the students that we work with. And I think about how when they're in elementary school, you know, developmentally, they're in one place, right? They come home. You know, in the beginning, you know how much formula they drank. You know how many times they went to the bathroom. You know how much they pretty much moved, right? Like, there's cameras now that tell me if my kid moved in the middle of the night. They go to elementary school, you don't know anymore what happened throughout that day, which is huge. You know, so that's a change. And then after they go to middle school. Middle school, they don't know who they are. And they're trying to figure that out. So for us to navigate who they are when they don't know who they are, it's huge. It's not easy. Then they go to high school. Who are you going to be? They don't know. Who knows? And in the meantime, now we're throwing a pandemic at them. We're throwing social media at them. We're throwing emotions at them that they haven't had in 2 years. So it means so much to me that we have parents here because let's be honest, going to these kinds of presentations is not the norm. It's not easy. And so the fact that you guys are here is huge. And I really want you to help me let people know that this presentation will be online. It'll be on the guidance webpage for the whole district. It will also be on our newsletter for the high school because people can go back and watch it. And this is really a district initiative. This isn't something that is just the guidance department. This is part of our strategic plan. You know, looking in the back here, we have tons of counselors, and up here we have tons of administrators. So it shows we're a team. We need to be a team. It takes a lot of people anymore. There's a lot of things going on, and a lot of things that are important, and a lot of things that we're like, maybe we should let that go, but I'm not sure. So, you know, using your counselors and your administrators and everyone as, you know, just even an extra ear, or even just calling and saying, I'm not really sure, should I care about this? What should I do about this? You know, we can help you through it. I'm not gonna act like we have all the answers, because we don't. Nobody does. Kids are complex. Every single one of them is, and they come to us with different needs, different situations, but that's why we have to work together. We have to be a team, and being a team while we're doing this only helps the children. And one of the things that I really push too that is really important, that student, your child needs to be part of that team. And we need to work together to make sure that we're identifying what their needs are and also what your needs are at the same time. Because let's be honest, nobody's perfect. Nobody gets it. There's no manual. You know, if they cry, you just don't give them the bottle. You know, so like it's different. So for everyone to come here is really important, and I really appreciate it, and I really can't thank you enough. One of the things that we're doing as a district to make sure we're doing what we need to do on our end to support our kids is we've really been working with George here to identify what are the needs. So I met with some of the counselors and with George, and we said, you know, these are the things that we're seeing. How do we make sure as a district that we're identifying these things and supporting all of our students to kind of address those things? So this Thursday, he's going to be meeting with the counseling department, K through 12. So I'm really excited about that, and I know a lot of the counselors are really excited about that. He's also met with our middle school and high school teachers because, you know, they've been through a lot too. Everyone's been through a lot. So we want to make sure that our staff's mental health is good, that our students' mental health is good, and so that we can help you as well. So I really hope that you can take something away from this presentation to really feel good about where we're going and where we need to be, because as a community, I think it's really important for us all to work together because none of this is easy, and there's nothing about it that is going to be easy. So the more we work together, the better it can be. So I'd like to welcome George Scott.
I'm not so sure if you were told there was a prerequisite for being here tonight. I don't know that anybody shared that with you. You have to have stress in your life. Is there anybody here who does not? They live this stress-free life. How about before COVID? Anybody have a stress-free life? We got to be talking about stress because I don't know whether the world's spinning faster or just our culture is faster, but what it seems like is there's not enough time to do what we want to do, and we're frazzled a lot. So I want to talk about that frazzle. I think there are some really interesting things for we as moms and dads or grandparents if you're raising your grandkids, or even if you're an aunt or an uncle or a godparent, because we as adults are in the lives of kids a lot. And I'm going to talk about your kids tonight as if they're my kids. I'm going to talk to you about them, and the word I'm going to use is your babies. Doesn't matter whether you have a high school kid or a college kid. From my perspective, they're your babies. And that really helps us to understand that at all the stages of their lives, they're vulnerable. More vulnerable when they start out, less vulnerable as they get older, but sometimes we're not quite sure where they are in terms of their vulnerability. So stress will be a big thing. So raising healthy kids, right, in a culture of constant stress. I don't know about the rest of the world. I don't even know about the rest of the country. I just know about New Jersey and in particular Mercer County. I'm from Mercer County. I live here in Mercer County. I've always lived here in Mercer County. So that's where my work mostly has focused. And it's just now beginning to kind of stretch out through the state. Stress on kids, and I'm going to talk about you guys. Well, it's about time somebody talked about us. I want to talk about you guys, because to go through what you have been through as a mom or dad and to run your household through a time of COVID and to struggle with your babies and to see them struggle, and for you to look at them now and scratch your head and say, what happened? There's a lot of stress on that, and I know the teachers see it, the school support staff sees it, and the teaming up among all of us is going to make it a healthier environment for all of our kids. The other big idea down here is called an inconvenient truth. So I want to talk about some things that we know for a fact, whether or not we know it because it's been around for a long time, or we know it because the science is now pointing to it and say, that is a truth about families and about kids. And we should know what that is, except it may be inconvenient. It's kind of like, oh man, I wish that wasn't true. But it is true. And we're going to talk about what that looks like. So, I don't know, how many of you remember 2006, right? The Al Gore documentary called Inconvenient Truth, right? So originally when I was kind of putting my thinking together and trying to make this happen, I thought, probably I should give credit to Al Gore, because he's the one that used this about climate change. And I was all prepared to do that. Now, here's the definition, right? What gets us in trouble is not what we don't know, it's what we do know, but we treat it as if it ain't so. It's not because we don't know stuff, we know a lot of stuff. So I was prepared to say, thank you, Mr. Gore, but instead who I found that came from is this guy. Actually, Mark Twain is the one so we're talking over 100 years ago or more. An inconvenient truth, and I want to define that as we go along, because you are faced with it with your babies, at work, at home, in the extended family, in the community, in school, all the time. So let's see how I can help you leave tonight feeling a little bit better that you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on with your kids. So what gets us into trouble is not what we don't know, it's what we know for sure. So I want to talk to you about some assured needs, things that we know about kids and what they need. So, for instance, routines in the family help maintain healthy rhythms. That's the truth. I'll give you an example. A regular sleep routine helps your kids be healthier. That's a struggle. Why did he start there? I can't get my kid to go to bed on time, particularly if my kid's in high school. But sleep routines are critical. And you know what happened during COVID? All the sleep routines went away for kids that were isolated at home. So what I'm going to say to you is, you and I need to figure out how to be reasonable and get your kid gradually into a right time in bed, right time up in the morning, because that will help their body regulate. And what we see in terms of that, what some people call bad behavior, it's a dysregulated body, right? It's just they can't kind of figure out how to make this work. Part of the truth is routines have been blown up. Here's the second one that the research is behind. Eating meals together as a family is good for everybody. It's like, oh my God, you don't know my family though. It's chaotic. It's crazy. We got sports and we got part-time jobs and this one's on the computer and this one and this one and this one. That's the truth too. But here's the inconvenience of this. The research says when families, at least one time a week, usually around dinner, if they can sit at the table at the same time, the long-term effects of that are less drug and alcohol use, less premarital sex and therefore pregnancy, better progress in schools. Kids who are reconnected to family each day, because, think about it this way. When your kids leave the home in the morning, just like when you leave the home in the morning, the culture blows the family up, right? They've got stressors out there and stressors out there. Now it's the time for mom and dad, or mom and dad, or regardless of who the adults are in the family, to bring the kids together at one time a week to start. That's the truth. I know it's inconvenient. Sorry. No, I'm not. It's a truth that really is helpful for kids. Here's another one. Spending time in nature benefits both our physical and our emotional well-being. The Japanese call it a shinrin-yoku, forest bathing. What it means is, now we know that if you go for a walk in the forest and the woods, you don't have to have the big forest, a wooded area, you will regulate your breathing and you will regulate your heart rate. It will calm your body. It's a truth. It's what nature does and nature's rhythms and nature's sites that helps our bodies re-regulate. It's been going on for eons. It's just a truth. I know, it's inconvenient. Oh, and if you decide to do that, here's the other inconvenience. You got to do it without your cell phone. There's an inconvenient truth. Because that's a distraction. That keeps you somewhere else and not here. Here's another one. Being healthy should be a priority over being happy. I've surveyed audiences upon audiences of moms and dads and said, hey, listen, raise your hand if you want your kid, your first priority is you want your kid to be happy. Almost all the hands go up. Here's the problem with happiness. It's elusive. It seems to rise and fall based upon how much money you got, if your friend likes you or doesn't like you, if your battery on your computer died. Happy fluctuates. But when you are healthy, when you can regulate, when you stay in your body and not flip out, that's a healthier way to be. That should be a priority first over happiness. And then there's this one. There are things we can do to calm our minds and calm our bodies. That actually, the thing that we call anxiety is real. Some of you say, got it, that's me. But the reality is, what we know what's going on in the body, and we also know how we can train the body to be calmer. In fact, really across the state, in places that I've been recently, they're bringing more and more of the mindfulness, the deep breathing in at the start of the day. Because when your body is calm, everything else works really well. There's a list of examples of inconvenient truths. That's just how it works. These are important things. Now, this is from a book called The Power of Showing Up. It's written specifically for parents. And what it says is one of the very best scientific predictors of how any kid turns out, happiness level, academic success, leadership, meaningful relationships, is whether in their life at least one adult has consistently showed up for them. One trusted, healthy adult. Here's the sad news and the good news. It doesn't have to be a mom or dad. That's sad, but it's also good news. Because it means that when moms and dads are going through really difficult times, if somebody else who's healthy stands up and is present, your kid benefits from that. Sometimes it's a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, the neighbor, a coach, a teacher. There's lots of that. But what we know is the power of showing up says you got to be healthy in the life of a kid, and if you're simply present, it makes a whole lot of difference. So when we take a look at, I only brought my copy so you can flip through it and decide if you want it. The reality that when I talk to school staff around this issue of showing up is kids actually want you to be there. I know, they call you annoying. I know. You don't know anything. You're so annoying. But here's the reality. The reality is, and I'm going to point this out in just another slide or two, kids feel safer emotionally and physically, when there's an adult present. Now, there is this thing, and we'll talk about this too, called differentiation. As your babies grow, when they get to be about 14, 15, 16, 17, they begin to differentiate from the family. They establish their own identity, right? Yes, I'm still a member of the Scott family, but I'm George, I'm different. And then they'll come home at the end of the day, hopefully have dinner at the same family table, right? But then the next day they go out. And that's how they practice differentiating and becoming independent from. That's really important stuff. Showing up means they've got to have the adult in their life to bring that sense of control, calm, and I'm going to give you a couple more words to define that. Power of showing up. We know this stuff, folks. So together, you and I, or you and the school staff, or you as parent groups, or you with inside your family, these are hard, fast truths, because what we know is we know how it works now. We know what a healthy kid looks like. And even if we don't have the label or the language to describe it, we can say, wow, that kid's like out of control, or that kid is really sad, or that kid is really anxious. We know it. We know what it looks like. And as we're talking here tonight, what I know is you're holding up each of these slides as a measure for your own children. And you should be. That's the reason why you leave your house and miss the first 3 innings of the Phillies game, because your kids matter more, right? It's the kind of thing like, this is the sacrifice that we talk about, where you say, I have to do some priorities here. I want to raise a healthy kid. That's really important for me. My kids really matter. My babies really matter. We know what healthy adolescents look like, and we also know what healthy adults look like. And I have no guarantee to myself that all of you here are healthy. And that's not a criticism. There's a reality in our culture that the stressors weigh on us, and they begin to erode even our ability to kind of keep our head above water. Or I have no idea whether or not your partner at home is healthy, or whether you worry about him or her. So what I know is this. Our kids have to have, I'm sorry if it's inconvenient, a healthy adult in their lives. In the absence of that, they can't be healthy. Unless that significant adult pops up from somewhere else. So keep an eye on that, right? So that walk in the woods could be a really good thing to help you re-regulate. Because the healthier you are, the healthier your babies will be. And we know what a safe environment looks like. I do a lot of work with schools, and what we're talking about here, this word will come up later too, is creating sanctuary classrooms. Don't you love that? Can you imagine what a sanctuary is? It's a place where you go and you're completely safe. It doesn't matter whether you did your homework or you didn't. When you're with this teacher, you know you're safe. He or she will talk to me about it, but I won't be ashamed and embarrassed, because this is a sanctuary. I want to be here. The bell rings to go to the next class. I really like to stay. You know that trusted adult in that sanctuary classroom. Showing up. So here's what showing up means according to Dan Siegel in the book. It is offering kids a sense of safety. We've talked about that, right? So keep that in mind. Not just physical safety. I'm not suggesting you beat your kids. But what I am suggesting is your home and is your relationship with your babies safe emotionally? And we'll talk about what that looks like. Of being seen, right? And being seen is really this issue of the babies know they're not invisible, that they matter. That mom and our dad are paying attention. That's critically important for kids to grow up well and healthy. Feeling soothed, that when they get upset, there's a mom or dad there to calm them. And we've got some really great stuff about soothing and knowing that they are secure, that somebody's got their back. That's showing up. The inconvenient truth is those things are on you, not on your babies. They're on you. They're on me. They're on the staff that's here. Any adult in the life of your child has an obligation to show up and be that. Because the end result is why you send your kids to school. See, the end result is when kids get that, they become more curious about learning, and learning takes off. But they got to do this other stuff first. So how about this? I want to talk to you about penguins and rats. Now, some of you are saying, okay, with the penguins, but I'm going to take a break when you get to the rat section. I think they both tell us really important lessons as moms and dads, or significant adults in the lives of kids. So let's begin here. It's a story of vulnerability, right? Look at those little chicks. You know that they're in Antarctica and they are vulnerable. That the weather is hostile. Now, they're adaptable. They've got these little fat little bodies that keep them warm with these little fur coats. They're really cute. So even in a hostile environment, these guys here can pretty much be okay. Unless the environment, and keep your ear tuned to that because we're going to talk about that, unless the environment becomes more hostile. See, when it does, it encourages them to seek shelter. When the environment is hostile, kids usually look to somebody that they can get to be protected. It's called buffering. Kids know they need an adult when things begin to get scary. Think about your little one. You may have seen this last night for Halloween, right? Scary costume comes to the door. You might have a little one, and they run behind you. They know it's scary, but you are the safety. They need you to buffer them, protect them from the scare. Our babies need that all the time. Preschool, kindergarten, elementary, middle, high school. I'm going to suggest that some of you in the room didn't get enough buffering yourself when you were growing up. Who was in your corner? Who kept you safe? How did you know you were seen and you mattered? Because some people grow up in nests of families where that's not true. And the end result is we suffer more. Doesn't mean it's terrible, deadly. It just means we suffer more. And then there's this that happens. When it gets really, really, really bad, they will seek the shelter of each other. Now, I'm going to work backwards from my older kids. Part of the work that I do is with the Traumatic Loss Coalition, and part of the work of the Traumatic Loss Coalition is to do suicide prevention and to respond to schools and organizations when there's been a student death, even by suicide. And probably in early September, I got one of those calls, and I went to a district up in Middlesex County because one of its students took his own life. When I walked in that day, they were all we create a safe space. How about that language, right? We create safe spaces for friends and other kids who are upset by the news. And in high school, you know what you will find? No kid was hugging an adult. They were all hugging each other. That's the shelter of each other. That's what adolescents are supposed to do. They're supposed to cling and hold on and be together in it. It was a perfect natural scenario under a very difficult situation. Now, if you look at the byline up there, it says, which is not what is best for younger kids. It is not. It is okay for kids who are differentiating. But here's what's happening in the culture. And this comes out of a book called The Myth of Normal by Dr. Gabor Mate. Because our families are stressed, because some families have unraveled, where it's a single parent, because of the introduction of social media where kids have easy access to other ideas, as a result of that, where parents not paying attention, our younger children are seeking the shelter of each other. And the reason that it's harmful is because they need an adult present. Their brains and their experiences, their lived experiences, are not enough where they can help each other really well. They think they can, but they all have similar life experiences at 8 or 10 or 12. So the younger the child, if they are too much separated from the adults in the family, it's going to be not a desirable outcome for that kid. And then there's this. See, when the storm really gets bad, the adults show up. That's the book. That's the message. That doesn't mean hover. For those of you that hovers, please stop. For those of you that are snowplow parents, please stop that. That's not helpful. That means your anxiety's up. It's about your anxiety. It's not about your kid's danger. It's about your anxiety about that. And what we know is kids are kind of, any of you have like plants in your house and you get this plant and you're watering it and fertilizing and it's doing really well. And all of a sudden, one year it ain't. Dropping its leaves, the leaves are turning yellow. And somebody walks in and says, well, yellow, it's because it's pot bound. What do you mean? Well, its roots are trying to push out of the pot. The pot's too small. You got to give it more space. If you give it more space, the roots will grow and it'll get healthy again. That's the same phenomenon with our babies. They need a little bit more space as they get older so they can put down roots. Stay out of their business completely. No, I take that back. Don't be completely in their business. Keep an eye on them, because we've already said that, right? The adults have to pay attention. The kids have to feel they're seen. But the reality is they also need to practice getting it right and getting it wrong. They need to figure out how to problem solve the day-to-day stuff that comes. Because here's what's happening. I do some adjunct work over at TCNJ, and if I go there first day of classes for the new school year, if I go into the student center, it's packed with students. They're having a great time. But some of them have books to pick up, and some of them also have bills to pay. So I'm figuring how that happened. You know how that happened? Their parents are over in line picking up their books for them and taking care of all the stuff that they should be taking care of. That's an example of what happens when moms and dads run interference for them too much, above what's appropriate for them to do. And yes, it is hard to, what's the balance? That is difficult. It's not impossible. It's just difficult. But we're not done here with these penguins. When it gets really cold and really stormy, there's something here that happens that looks like that. They circle up, they create sanctuary, and they put the babies right in the middle, where it's warm and where it's protected. They buffer them from the storm. And these penguins on the outer, these mom and dad penguins, these healthy penguins, they're on the outside here. You can see them. They've got their backs to the storm. Their heads are tucked in. The whole clan survives because they work together. Now, here's something really interesting, and this applies to you folks. When these penguins on the outside get cold, they shuffle their cold bodies into the circle, and the warm penguins shuffle their bodies out of the circle, and they have these rings of protection in the shelter of each other. The message for you is you can't always be on. You can't always work exhausted. You got to make yourself a priority. You got to take care of you. That's really important. If no one else is taking care of you, you got to take care of yourself. Because if not, then when the storm comes, you don't have the energy to keep the babies safe. Instinctively, we all know this. We know how it works. We know what to do. But we're so exhausted and so distracted and so overwhelmed sometimes, particularly coming out of COVID. Let me make this comment. I blame COVID for everything. I got a ticket last week for going through a red light. I blame COVID. COVID brain. It's not my fault. Got the ticket anyway, but it wasn't my fault. You can use COVID for any reason you want. Why are you doing that? Must be COVID. How come you have that in your house? Probably COVID. But at some point, COVID's going to be far enough behind us that we can't blame it. However, coming out of the disruptions from the pandemic, yes, you have been affected. And let me say this. For some of us, COVID was no more than an inconvenience. Me. I'm almost ashamed to say that. Couldn't go to my favorite restaurant, had to wear a damn mask, all that stuff. Just an inconvenience. But not everybody. Some of you, on this other end of the spectrum, it was hellish. There was illness in your family. There was suffering in your family. Your family suffered when a loved one went to the hospital, and your family suffered when a loved one died, and you're still in that grief phase because it was hellish. And we can't forget that. We can't forget that some people paid a huge price for the pandemic. Sometimes life doubles up on us. Sometimes the environment in our homes and communities and schools are chaotic or even hostile. Sometimes, and maybe yours, maybe you're sitting there thinking, damn, why is he looking in the windows of my house? Maybe you find that your family is chaotic. You didn't create that. The stressors of life created that. But once we're aware of it, like, this doesn't feel normal. This doesn't feel healthy. This doesn't feel okay. Now we can take some steps to bring some order there. It's the same thing with schools, right? Kids come back, their behavior is different. The schools scratch their head, they adapt. They adapt, they look at that behavior, and they try to socialize again to where that kid was 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago. We can do this work. We know how bodies and minds work. We can do this. Sometimes we do not provide the sanctuary that kids need. We don't buffer them enough sometimes. It's true. And what happens is our kids get injured emotionally. And the reason that's even harder than a physical injury is because you can't see it. But you can see the results of it. And in my practice, when I'm working with my clients, one of the phrases that I've kind of coined and used is only clean wounds heal. You can't just say, oh, get over it. That happened 2 years ago. What are you doing? Because some wounds are deep, and some wounds need specific attention from moms and dads or the adult in the family or the school counselor or school in order to help that to heal. As adults, it's our responsibility. That's a truth. Kids cannot heal themselves. Kids cannot protect themselves. It really requires us to step up and be part of doing that. So, how does this become that? How does that happen? I could sit and talk with individuals here in the room tonight, and they could say, you know, there was a time, even before COVID, that things seemed to be pretty good. There was enough joyfulness, and right, things went well. And now, oh my God, what happened? It's a great question to ask, and it's an important question to ask. And let's not forget, I'm going to back up a second. So how do you go from here to here to here? Parent exhaustion. Even if it wasn't for COVID, that was the little joke at the very beginning. Your stress levels are huge. Don't dismiss it. Is everybody stressed? Yes. But there are 3 kinds of stress. There's stress. Sometimes that can be a motivating factor. There's bad stress. But then there's really toxic stress, which can make you physically and emotionally ill. If you accumulate it. If you got that kind of stuff going on in your life, and we'll talk about that. My favorite picture here is that one. That dad is so exhausted he doesn't even realize he's the new Mona Lisa. I thought that was great. Did you realize this? That kids' stress hormone levels, when they get ratcheted up, when their cortisol is spinning, they are heavily influenced by emotional atmosphere in the home and in the classroom. So what goes on among you folks directly influences their stress response system. And I tell teachers all the time, the adults in the room can have a negative effect on the kids in the room if your stress levels are up. If you're irritable, cranky. And we'll talk about what that looks like. Because it may look like that. It's no surprise that there's been an increase in the disruption of relationships during COVID. Separations and divorces. Not a surprise. Fragile relationships couldn't tolerate the disruption of COVID. It's no surprise that marijuana use and alcohol use went up during COVID, because we will do anything we can to regulate, and if we don't know how to do it naturally, we'll ingest something to help us. No surprise. It's the way human beings are wired, but we have to pay attention to that, because that's really important stuff. So it may look like this. lived experiences, how your kid lives his or her life, your lived experiences has more of a profound impact than your genes, than your genetic wiring. So therefore, if it's been pretty disruptive, that lays inside of you. Disruptive. George, what is that? It could be verbal abuse. There's something called ACEs, which we will not talk about tonight, adverse childhood experiences. And what we know is that there are 10 categories out of the original research that was done on middle-class, white, college-educated people, 17,000 of them. And they looked at 10 categories. Physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse. Did that happen to a person between birth and 18? Physical neglect, emotional neglect. Did that happen birth to 18? Did you bear witness to your mother being treated poorly in your home? Did somebody in the home have a diagnosed or undiagnosed mental illness? Was there a drug addiction? Was there a divorce or a separation? Those things added up then are disruptive physically and emotionally to the human person. And we worry about that. And what we know is COVID has shaken it up even more. Lived experiences. We even know when I was growing up was the term was a kind of a predisposition. I have a predisposition to depression because my grandparents were depressed. And what they're tracking now is that it's not genetically transferred necessarily. Sometimes it's parent to parent to parent. And it creates an atmosphere where this great sadness called depression exists. So we take a look at our lived experiences. What does that look like? And we have control over that as moms and dads and adults. Okay, so what's the point? The point is stuff happens. Technically, that's called crap. Crap happens in families. Crap happens to individuals in families. And sometimes you're resilient enough to weather it and you heal and it doesn't have a big negative effect. But when you get overwhelmed by it, particularly if your birth to 18 experience was significant, then it affects your resiliency now. Let me digress because this is important for any of you that plan to be pregnant, are pregnant, may have daughters that are pregnant. Here's what the research is saying now. That disruption begins in utero. That if mom lives in a toxic environment, pregnant mom lives in a toxic environment with any combination of those ACEs, her increased cortisol level, her stress response level gets transferred directly to the baby and the baby is born stressed. What we used to call colicky, now what we know is it's a disruption to the whole system. You know, there are 3 places where your body holds its stressors. Let me check this out with you guys. 3 places. Number 1 is your head and the neck, so you're the headache people in the room. Second are your gut people. People with belly aches, diarrhea, constipation, irritable bowel syndrome, increased during COVID, by the way. And then the third place happens right here in your chest with pulmonary illnesses and cardiac illnesses from the holding on of toxic stressors in your life. Because lived experiences has a profound effect. All right, enough bad news. Help me see some optimism here, George. What's going on? Well, let's take a look at these cute little rat pups. So probably 30 years ago now, accidentally I come upon this guy by the name of Michael Meany from McGill University up in Canada. And he's really interested in the relationship between mood and stress. And he uses these rat pups. So they do observations, but they also take blood samples to see whether the cortisol level is up or not up. So cortisol is that stress hormone that when you get scared or overwhelmed or really stressed, you can feel it surging. And then when things calm down, you can feel it recede. He's doing that with rat pups back in the 90s. Here's one of the things he found. Simply by handling those pups the researchers would reach into the cage, take them away from the mom. They'd put them over here in a smaller container. It increased the stressors for the pups, and their heart rates were up. And they test the blood, their cortisol level was up. That's just like us. And when our cortisol level was up, the best part of us, this executive functioning part of us, doesn't work. Here's my prime example. I used to have a slide of this. This is your kid, elementary, middle, or high school. There's a big quiz tomorrow, a big test tomorrow. And he's studying, or she's studying, and she's studying, and they got it nailed. You question them on it, and they got it. Then they take the test, and they get a C or a D, or they fail it. How is that possible? They knew it. Well, it's possible because when you're scared, when you anticipate that it's going to be difficult, when your cortisol level is up, this part of your brain stops functioning. He didn't have any more access to what he learned last night. It was taken over by an emotional part of his brain. Had he been able to calm, or had they done a calming experience to start the day, and his body was calmer, this would have worked and he would have done much better. There's a direct correlation between anxiety, worry, fret, fear, and performance. Which is why we talk to teachers about creating sanctuary classrooms, right? The nature of education creates a high energy, sometimes negative. So how do we keep an eye on it? And how do we see how the kids are responding? And how do we then take the temperature of the room so we can do it differently? Some rats reacted more strongly than others. Some of our poor rats were just freaked out. That interested me. But I was more interested in the next piece of the research. I forgot I added this in. This is high cortisol levels. This is you being put in a box. See this here? See this face and this face? That's called a yuck face. That's what the research calls it. That's the face when you're upset with your kids that you give them. And it's disarming. What did I do? Because they're looking at your face and you've got that look. You remember the look your mom gave you when you stepped out of line? That was her yuck face. Because the face is very expressive about what's going on inside of us. We have to be really careful about that. Kids who come from more chaotic families, when they go into the classroom, they're convinced the teacher already doesn't like them because they've never been successful, and they're looking for their face to see whether or not they're acceptable, to see whether or not they're good enough. That's why we work with teachers about checking in on themselves in terms of what they bring to the classroom in interpersonal relationships. So let me just back up here. Remember these guys, and then this is what happened. That mom took care of their anxiety. Some of the moms. Some of the moms were more neglectful, so therefore they didn't do the 4 things about showing up. But these moms that did high licking, those babies just calmed themselves right down. Here's an example of showing up. It's a quality of presence. The kids get a sense of safety, a sense of being seen, a sense of feeling soothed and secured. That's what the mother rats did with the pups. Just by nuzzling them, licking them, and grooming them, she stayed calm, they calmed down. If she was frantic, they would stay frantic. Because kids read off of us all the time. So it's really important that we know who we are. The pup who received the calming attention no longer startled, more curious, and did not suffer surges of stress hormones. Let me tell you why I like that sentence, because there's a direct correlation to teaching and learning. If you can get a kid in your classroom to be curious, when their curiosity is up, you've got them. Learning happens. They want to know about everything. The calmer they are, the more curious they are. And here's the rationale. We are containers of energy. You can read that in all kinds of different places. But we have a vibration to us, an energy to us. You know, did you ever walk into somebody negative walks into the room? It's kind of like, woof, you can feel the negativity. We can do that positive or negative. So we are an energy. And the thing about that is, I have an admission to make. Right now, I have lost my train of thought. Let me tell you how that works. I got these doors in my head. Every once in a while, a door will open, and my great thought will go right through that door. The door closes, and I stand here like, I got to wait. Because that's what just happened. Curiosity is where the kid's energy level is really at a really nice level and in sync with the teacher. See that door just opened back up. So they have this reciprocity where the kid feels safe, and when the kid feels safe, energy is good. Here's the point. If you have to use your energy to survive, you can't use your energy to live, to learn. If I'm always worried about what somebody's going to say to me, or if I'm going to get shamed and embarrassed, if somebody's going to yell at me, then I can't use this part of my brain to do the learning. But when I'm curious, because an adult in my environment makes a calmer atmosphere, like the classroom or home, then I become more curious and my stress hormones are down. If you're neglected, if you're not seen, if you're not safe, if you're not secure, if an adult did not show up, then you're a mess. You get really messy in terms of how you try to navigate life. And here's a really other interesting thing, and this is where I think we come in as teachers and you come in as moms and dads. If I take a pup from a mom who's pretty neglectful, and I put that pup over here to a high-licking mom, that pup's system calms right down again. Remember, one trusted, significant adult, and it doesn't have to be the mom or dad. Somebody who pays attention. Somebody who smiles at that child. Somebody who's curious about the child and asks the child about himself or herself. That's a significant help and stabilization for some kids. I think this is where we come in as healthy and trusted parents. Now, I'm not suggesting that, because that would just be yucky and probably referable to diapers for some reason. But what is it? Let me back to this. We still have a few minutes. How do you lick your kids? What's the ritual at home that you use that you know calms them down, whether they're infants or whether they are older babies? What do you do? Yeah, touching, safe touches, critically important, right? Critically, hugs. Now, there's really a cool story about that. You know, the research says the hug has to be 20 seconds long in order to really make a difference. So I use that whenever I'm doing work with either, professional staff or professional parents. And then one night I had a colleague sitting in the audience, a superintendent in a district, neighboring district. And he said to me, this goes probably a week or so later, he said, "Hey, can I talk to you about that 20-second hug thing?" I said, "Sure." He said, after I left the presentation that night, I went home looking for my daughter, who's 14. Her name is Becky. And I walk in the house and I say to my wife, "Where's Becky? Where's Rebecca?" She's upstairs doing homework. "Yo, Becky, come on down here." Nothing. She didn't respond. She didn't answer, nothing. He said, I stood at the bottom of the steps. "Come on, Beck, come on down. Just quickly, just come on down." "Daddy, I'm doing homework. Leave me alone." No, I can't leave you alone. "Sweetie, come on. Just come on down here." She comes trudging on down the steps. She hits the bottom. I said, "What happened?" He said, "I went over and wrapped her in a bear hug." I said, "And what happened?" He said, "She was squirming, saying, 'This is weird, like, leave me alone.'" I said, "What did you do?" He said, "I did 17, 18, 19, 20.
Something like that happened to me this morning. Because my daughter is running to the bus because she wants to be the first one. And she doesn't even say bye to me. And then, "Cheryl, come. When she gets back, I hold her.
Good for you. You hold them, right? You hug them. So I said, is that the end of the story? He said, no. He said, actually, a couple weeks later, my daughter came to me and said, Dad, could we do that 20-second hug thing again? Our babies want that connection. It's called a positive, stable attachment. They want to know that you're safe. And that skin touch, that touching, that hugging, that holding is really powerful. How else do you lick your kids? You listen to them, right? And listening to them doesn't mean I'm on my phone. Oh, wait, I got to take this call. That's not listening to them. That means no matter what happens, you're with them. You're down at their level. You're listening to them. You're nodding your head. You're questioning. You're smiling. That's a lick. How else do you lick your kids? How many of you read to your kids at night? Yeah? They know the ritual. Remember we talked about rituals, how critically important they are. The ritual is at a certain time, before the bewitching hour of sleep, you go with your kids upstairs to the room. With my kids, I used to carry them on my back up the steps. That was the ritual. One on top of the other. We were just pancaked one on top of the other. Brush their teeth, wash their face, climb into one of the two beds, pick a favorite book, and that's the ritual. That's what we did. That was licking my babies. If you don't have any of those, figure it out, what your babies need. Figure out how to lick them. Figure out how to nuzzle them, how to tickle them, how to play with them, how to laugh with them, how to kick the soccer ball with them without being competitive. And what that mother was doing it wasn't about love. It's not about love. It's about these things. It's about calm, safety, and peace. It's about calming their bodies down again. Because some of them get really wired, right? And they want to da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, or they're squirming. You got to tolerate that somewhat. But when you hug, that 20-second hug, you can actually feel their bodies relax. There was a time in the good old days when teachers could hug kids freely. You can't do that much anymore, right? Got screwed up. Some teachers say I still hug. I always ask permission. Kids want the connection. I'm going to suggest this. When you're upset, don't you love a hug? Yeah. Right? I mean, if something terrible happens, and a friend comes or a family member comes, that's the first thing that happens. Let me hold you. Let me hug you. That's the calming fact of routine. Now, with that mother, it's almost like the mother was saying this. I see you. I'm going to pay attention. You're safe with me. You're secure with me. I'm in it with you. You're not alone. That's such a powerful message. More and more and more of our babies today feel disconnected and alone. Because we're so harried trying to put food on the table or make things work or go off to work earlier or take one of our kids to soccer or. And that's why you get to the table over a meal. Remember the storm clouds? This is what storm clouds look like in the home and in schools. Harsh, critical, mean to each other. The culture shows us that all the time. Our babies feed off of that because they see it on what's streaming, or they see it on their social media, or they see it on TV, or they hear mom and dad's rhetoric. It goes inside and influences our kids. And if that's okay with you, then it's okay. Then with whatever is going to happen, behaviorally is going to happen. But oh my goodness, we have such an influence to make it a better environment. That we believe in discipline, but we don't believe in punishment. Discipline is, how do you learn from that? Right now, today, automatically, it's give me your phone. Go for the jugular. Give me your phone. I'm taking the car away. Rethink that. I just happen to know it's true. That's what parents do. What is it that you can do where they will take whatever happened and use it as a learning experience? Will they be shocked if you say, no, I don't want your phone. I want to talk about this. You don't want my phone? No, it's your phone. You can use your phone. They're shocked about that. You just flip that story just a little bit. Children who cannot find an adult who they trust and feel safe with. And then adults who lack understanding and forgiveness. That's an inconvenient truth. We know what a healthy kid looks like. We know how to create healthy families. We know what healthy adults look like. It's hard. It's really difficult. Maybe more now than ever. But the inconvenient truth is that we can't raise healthy kids unless the adults figure that out for themselves. These are red flags, by the way. These things are little red flags in your family. You say, ooh, we got that. I got number 2. I got number 4. They're indicators of disruption. Some of these things we've already talked about tonight. That sleep is number 1 because sleep is number 1. Of the 5 things that human beings need, sleep is number 1. A routine of sleep. That means you too. To help you re-regulate, to help your body calm itself. So here's a takeaway. Maybe this. Children don't get traumatized because they get hurt. Hurt is, you try to protect your kids from hurt, but sometimes kids get hurt. That's not the trauma. Do you know what the trauma is? The trauma is that they feel alone in the hurt. There's no trusted adult there. You're 10. Figure it out on your own. And they can't because they're 10. So we're raising next generation of humans. Somebody's future husband, wife, mother, father, friend, leader. How we treat our kids, how we speak to them, what they learn from us will be reflected back in the world. And we have an opportunity to do that. We can change the dynamic on this. We must make the effort, inconvenient as it is. We must pause before we react. Just wait before you want to yell at them, before you want to grab them by the arm. Just pause. In every interaction within our home and classroom, we hold the key to the future. It's an inconvenient truth. Everything we talked about now is the way it works. It's the solution to the issue of I worry about my babies. We know what to do. Now we got to, in the shelter of each other, and that's a comment that Melanie made earlier when we first started, you call the counselor. So listen, I was listening to that crazy guy the other night, and now I'm wondering about my kid. Can we talk? Can we meet? What can we do? Counselors love those kinds of phone calls. And nature's lessons. We learn about buffering here, and we learned about grooming and licking and calming there. And that's the book I'm suggesting that you kind of grab a copy of and read it before you go to bed. Comments or questions? Did I scare you or put you to sleep? A lot. I know. So, they need our support. Our babies need us. In whatever role we play in their lives, our babies need us. Kids can thrive. Kids can do it. They just need to know you've got their back. That's me. That's a cell phone number. This is my email address. You can either call me, text me, you can email me. This is a new website called Minding Our Children. I'm going to send this PowerPoint to Melanie, so she'll make that available to you guys. Was that you have a question? Thought I was done. Okay.
So how do you balance that? So you don't want to really get involved too soon. You want to allow them to figure it out, but you also don't want them to work through it alone. Like what are some things, what are some signs that we can figure out as parents, as teachers, as administrators, when we should be involving ourselves or when we should be stepping back?
The first First thing to do, which you've already done, is you pay attention, right? So you've concluded there's a struggle going on. The next best thing to do privately on the side is to go to them and say, I may have this wrong. It looks like you're struggling with that. Do you want me to help, or are you good? Because if you're good, I'll step back. But if I see the struggle where I think now you're hurting, I'm going to step in. But you always ask their permission to step into their lives on that. It's respectful. I would do that with it's a son or a daughter. Daughter, I would do that if she was 10. You seem, I don't know, your mood changed. When you left this morning, you were this, and now you're coming on as this. Is there anything going on that you would like me to know about? No. Okay, just ask it. I'll be in the kitchen if you want me. Because as your kids get older, your role changes. You're no longer the hovering parent. You become the resource, the problem solver. But the problem that most of us do is we intrude in their lives. We overindulge ourselves in their lives. And therefore, you take away their opportunity to figure it out. If the sadness were to go on, they couldn't, let's say that you knew that for that 10-year-old or 13-year-old, they had a restless night. I think it's really appropriate the next morning at breakfast, if that's the routine, to be able to say, I don't know. I know you said you got it, but I think you were really restless last night. Like, you got something going on in your mind. Now do you want me to be involved? No. Okay. You know where to reach me. Because what you're doing is you're really setting boundaries. You're modeling good behavior. You're giving them an opportunity to either try to figure it out or not. And I think most times, if you handle it that way, most times they will approach you and say, remember when we were talking the other day? This is what's really going on. I think we know what healthy kids look like. You know when something's, you either know it because you've seen it or you feel it. Your gut says, things aren't going well. That's a great superpower. Say, my superpower is your dad says things aren't going well. Need my help? Nope. Okay. Other comments or questions? Ma'am. Yeah. Well, actually, he is listening. He knows every time you approach him that you're talking to him about sleep. He knows that, right? But my guess is he can't figure out how to solve it either. So that would be number one. Number two, don't forget, they're kids, so therefore, he's not aware of the eventual outcome of poor sleep, which is really terrible health, poor sleep. And rather than preach it, I would use the same approach, and that is, I am really worried that you're not sleeping. And this guy the other night says, of the 5 things human needs, number 1 is sleep. Can we talk about how to make that happen? Now, for many of our adolescents today, it doesn't happen because their devices are in the room. So they're dinging and pinging all night long, right? Because they got to be connected. That's a hard one for parents, but the obvious solution is, it doesn't seem like you can manage that. I'll give you another night if you want to try. But if I feel that you're not managing that, then I'm going to want to talk to you about keeping it out here. Let's see whether or not that helps you get a good night's sleep. So I don't think it's an answer. It's a solution that takes several little steps where you say, I'm worried about you. As opposed to, you're not sleeping, give me your damn phone. Because that's the style when you're really jammed up and you don't have a lot of time and you're really irritable yourself. That's really where we go. But sleep it's critically important. Every article that I'm reading now, that if you lose enough disrupted sleep, you become pre-diabetic. Who the hell wants that? Right? It's terrible, terrible, terrible. There's another hand. No? Yes? Sleep. So let me ask this question. How's your sleep?
I don't know if I expect I don't know what I did sleep. The lights are on. And we asked assignments. I had some music today. And there's always sleep. So
I'm going to suggest this on that while the school people are in the room. I would never allow schoolwork to interfere with well-being. Ever. This is the power of the mom and dad, right? Say, hey, listen, here's the deal. Because I'm really worried about your sleep. Oh, Mom, you worry too much. Maybe I do, but I'm talking about just sleep. I'm really worried about it. Because what I've been reading and what I've been hearing is if we have disruptive sleep, we get more and more irritable. We don't feel like eating. We might even put on weight or we might lose weight. We have this food stuff. I don't want that. So therefore, here's the deal. By blah, blah, blah time, that's the end of your work for school. Now, if you're disorganized, then we'll have to take that on. But let's just say by 10 o'clock. By 10 o'clock, it's done. Yeah, but what happens if I don't get it done? I'm going to call the school and say, I gave you permission to not get it done. Because I'm concerned about your sleep. We'll work the other stuff out. And my guess is, I'm a full believer in this, in the years with teachers. If I were to run that conversation by a teacher and say, hey, listen, we're just trying to get this kid on a sleep schedule. Can you give a little bit of flexibility here in terms of the stuff being incomplete? I believe that there could be something worked out. Yes? I don't mind them struggling, and I think some kids can handle that schedule that you just mentioned. Some kids can carry a load at school, or they could be on 2 different sports, or they could be in this club, and they seem to have it. Keep an eye on them, but they seem to have it. But not everybody can do that. And yes, A, there's an expectation set by parents. B, there's an expectation set by school. And C, there's an expectation set by the peer group. No question about that. But it doesn't mean that you have to go away and you have to say, okay, I tried, I just can't make a difference. What it does mean is to say, you have a really busy schedule. Do you have 10 minutes for me later? Because I'd like to have a meeting with you. I would ask that. I just need 10. Yeah, how about around 7 after dinner? Great. I'll meet you at the dining room table. I'll meet you at the kitchen table. I'll meet you in your room. And then when you go, you're very conscious of the time. You say, look, I appreciate the space that we created for this. I don't know what to do with my worry. Because it's not that you're involved in a lot. It's just I see this in your behavior or in your attitude. I see this that's really hurtful. I don't like the way you talk to your dad. I don't like the way you talk to your sister. And I don't know what to do with that. So I will ask for another 10 minutes tomorrow. What can we do so that you know that I can support you in what you're doing? That's a good way of doing it. It's very professional. It's very respectful. And even if they say, I don't know, leave me alone, say, well, I'll respect that. I'm going to leave you alone for today. But what time tomorrow will you have another 10 minutes? I can't let this go. You're my baby. I love you. I'm worried. And when I'm worried, I got to figure this out with you. I'm not going to figure it out for you. I'll figure it out with you. I think it's very powerful. Yes, ma'am.
Question about sleep is not the falling asleep. It is like 9:30, 10.
Yeah.
Is that 6 a.m. because school? Right now, that 7:40 a.m. time for a 14-year-old. So like my daughter, she just can't get up. So like I get up at 6, and I start my exercise. And I'm 20 minutes later, I'm kind of like, what's that? And my husband gets here, and we're all kind of working through this.
Why do you do that?
Because I know she has to get to school at a certain time, and even though the alarm's going off.
Do you work outside the home?
What?
Do you work outside?
Oh, yeah, I'm a teacher.
So you're a teacher. So
Yeah.
who gets you up in the morning and makes sure you get ready to get to school?
I just get
Well,
the alarm clock.
So is that part of your responsibility to get her up?
I feel like it is.
Can I-
Sorry, correcting myself.
Can I fire you from that job?
Okay. But then she still gets to school like it's that late. It's getting late.
That's on her, it's not on you. Let her, this is where we encourage them to be responsible for themselves, and they're going to skin their knee. Say, listen, but you got to give them advance notice. You can't spring it on them. You got to say, what's her name? Amy? Say, listen, Amy, I have to do this differently with you because it gives me agita every morning trying to get you out of bed, right? I wind up going to work and I'm upset, and I don't want to be upset. So here's the deal. You know what time you have to be there and what time you have to get up. So therefore, I would like you to take responsibility for your own alarm. And do you want me to remind you or you don't? No, I don't want you to remind me. I can do that. I'm going to leave. Now you're responsible for getting yourself up and doing what you need to do to get to school. So she screws up the first day. She said, oh, it's your fault. Not my fault. I got up. I'm fine. Is there another way I can help you? Is there something else you would like from me? Give me Amy's cell phone number. But it's that progression, because we worry about that being late. I say it's your responsibility. I get myself up. Now, if you want my help, I'm happy to give you my help. But what I'm not happy to do is to be barked at in the morning because I'm worried you're not getting to school on time and you won't respond to me. We need to do this differently. Do you have any ideas of how you'd like to do that idea that I love so much? One of my babies. I am not raising your kid. He's not coming and living with me. I got to tell you that right now. But do you know what that's about? No, that's the behavior. But do you know what's behind the behavior? That could be. That could be. One of the things that you should know about me, and it's probably already evident, even in my practice, I don't like labeling kids with disorders and diseases. I don't like doing that. I don't call them OCD. I don't call them ADHD. I don't do any of that. I focus on the behavior and the fact that they can own their own behavior. Now, if there were any doctor, psychiatrists in the room, they would leave the room right now because they don't believe that at all. But what I want to do is I want to have a common language conversation, why it matters to me as your mom, and I know it's really hard for you. Is there some other way we can do this? And the school refusal thing, I mean, I would stop using that term. And what I would say is there something here or something there that prevents you from going? I'm really interested in that. If you want me to keep it confidential, I'll keep it confidential. I don't need to tell anybody. But I'm really curious about it because you also don't seem to be happy with that behavior. And if you're not happy with it and I'm not happy with it, why are we living with it? Why does that behavior have a place in our family? Let's see whether we can figure out doing it differently. I think. Now look, I'm standing up here on a Tuesday night giving you answers and you're saying, yeah, that won't work. I get it. It's really about the relationship. It's really about pulling your kids into being part of the solution, not just being a problem. And it's about that says, I don't know that that's healthy. I just don't know that that's healthy. In fact, I'll tell you what, it's not healthy. I want to do stuff in my family with you that's healthy. So how are we going to do that? I don't know, he says. You figure it out. I've been trying to do that for all these years. I'm not good at it. I need your input on this. If you don't want to do it right now, I know I'm irritating you. That's fine. But can we talk later? Can I talk to you tomorrow? Is there another time we can talk? I want to solve this problem because I think it's not just a problem for me. I think it's a problem for you. That's powerful. That's powerful. That's what this licking and grooming is all about. You're not in it alone, pal. I know you struggle, but you know what? We're a smart family. We'll figure it out. And this is where I get myself in real trouble. And it won't always include taking a pill. That's why I'm not popular among psychiatrists. That's not always the answer. That's what Meany said. You know, he had this thing of hugs or drugs. He said, yeah, we can always create a pill. We can create a pill for anything. He said, but if the problem emanated out of a social interaction, can't we figure out the social interaction to solve the problem? And that way we don't have to introduce another chemical, another pill. You guys have been great. You let me poke at you.
I want to say one thing real quick. First, thank you so much for your questions. That was great. But now, since you're at school, I'm going to give you homework. I cannot promote a healthy community without all of your help. And we need to know what that looks like. Let's be honest. The people in this room, this should be filled. We should have the whole community here, every school, and people should feel comfortable being part of this. So even if you didn't love the presentation, it's going to be posted by next week. I need you to send it to at least one other parent, please. One parent. Because if one person sees it, they jump on the bandwagon and they understand that this is important. And it's something that we can normalize as a community to work together and be happy together and support each other. There's a lot of ugly out there, and we don't need that in our circles and in our community. We need to support each other's kids. We need to support each other's parents. And we can't do that unless if you're a part of it. So I really, really would appreciate you doing that, at least one parent if you send it to. And then on top of that, if you have any ideas or presentations that you think would be good, George isn't going away. I'm going to keep bothering him all year long. So he's going to still come back for other things. So if I have ideas from parents that they're like, this would be awesome, and I think I could get this group to go to it, my email's on the district website under the guidance page, and we will get George to come back. And I don't care if it's small groups or big groups or individual stuff that we need to address. That is a great thing to do. Michelle, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Just one thought I have on listening. I think not the parents, but really talking to kids about the importance of sleep. I really think they don't really get it. Like the parents struggle with it. Everybody's struggling with sleep, but I think if we could sort of make that as this is why this is important, helping kids to understand it's not just we're trying to take things away from them or lose them, but it does make them healthier, which will make them happier. I think as a school, and all of our schools, really putting that, like we talk about nutrition, and really educating the kids on sleep. Because electronics is in the family, the lights in the room, and then missing out on something is really severe. And a lot of people are not going on technology at night, and maybe long term we can make some traction in the sleep problem.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And on top of that, it's a lot better sometimes to hear from someone else than our parents. Let's be honest. Sometimes, I'll listen to my counselor, but my parent says it, they're like, no way. So that's definitely a great idea. And if you have any other ideas as far as students, your kids, parents, ways that we can get people together and add bits of things into it. If people need something, we want to provide it, and we want to make sure that there's not a stigma attached to it. And we want to build a sense of community and a sense of neighbors where we're taking care of one another. And, I want to be part of that process. I know the administration wants to be part of the process. The whole district does. And I cannot thank George enough for meeting with us. When I saw him speak before, he does an amazing job. He cares about the families and the school, and so I'm really thrilled to have you involved with us.
Yes, George, earlier, maybe 5 years earlier.
Never too late.
Yeah, maybe for the next time.
And I wasn't amazing 5 years ago.
Yes, you are.
Let's say, I don't know if I worry too much, but let's say my daughter, there's a lot of food she doesn't want to eat. In the morning, because now I'm learning how to eat what she wants. But sometimes I worry that.
You can make the choices and let her pick among the choices. They're still nutritious. And just give her a hug.
And about lunch, my husband keeps complaining, hey, how come your breakfast has lunch at the school?
This year,
He's always complaining about lunch. But me, as a mommy, I prefer that she eats at the school, and then when she comes home, I have something else for her. But then sometimes I worry, like in the morning, because now she's like, today, coffee, but then I tell her to sleep. You listen to me about food.
What Michelle said is sleep and nutrition are number 1 and number 2, and exercise is number 3. They are the top 3 things that you need for you. Nobody's going to do that for you, and for your babies as well. So just you'll have a healthier family. Thank you.